why did President Woodrow Wilson decide to invade Mexico? There were several reasons, including safeguarding the interests of the oil companies active in the Veracruz area, forestalling interference from other national powers, and teaching the citizens of Mexico about democracy. However, Wilson's main intention was to remove a dictator who seized power in a coup d'etat. This man was Victoriano Huerta, the president of Mexico at the time. Before Huerta rose to power, he was serving the dictator Francisco Madero as his most trusted general. Many groups opposed Madero, and in a short time, Huerta arrested him and after seizing power, murdered him. President Wilson refused to recognize Huerta's government because he believed other forces would rise up against him. He was right, and this revolution was led by General Venustiano Carranza. Carranza was against the Veracruz invasion, even though it was against Huerta like he was. Wilson offered aid to Carranza. Carranza rejected the offer. He was afraid of American interference in Mexico. He told Wilson that Mexican troops would do all the fighting. He only wanted guns and ammunition. American forces did, however, get involved in the conflict. President Wilson learned that a ship from Germany was bringing supplies to the Huerta government. The ship would land at the Mexican port of Veracruz. Wilson ordered the United States Navy to seize and occupy the port. The move started a storm of criticism in the United States and throughout Latin America. Many people in the U.S. opposed the intervention, but many also supported it. The writer Jack London wrote in Collier's magazine, "Verily, the Veracruzanos will yearn for the blissful day when Americans will conquer them again. They would not mind thus being conquered to the end of time." The Veracruzanos reacted to the intervention with rage. Since Huerta ordered his federal troops away from the city, the American army did not confront a regular army. Instead, they fought against the people of Veracruz, who were masons, shoemakers, carpenters, and students. After the intervention, thousands of Veracruzanos went quietly into internal exile and avoided any cooperation with invaders. Mexicans, federal forces, and constitutionalists were all offended, and several anti-American revolts broke out in Latin American countries. The military invasion was also a factor in keeping Mexico neutral in World War I. Mexico refused to participate with the United States and granted full guarantees to the German companies for keeping their operations open, especially in Mexico City. The American intervention failed at achieving its objectives. It contributed little to Huerta's fall a few months later and had little influence on the outcome of Mexico's Civil War. What caused President Wilson to invade Mexico again in 1916? The main reason was a man named Pancho Villa, who threatened to bring the U.S. and Mexico into direct conflict with each other. This would create a backlash against Carranza and his friendly ties to the U.S. Therefore, Villa would become the new Mexican national leader. Pancho Villa's forces raided the town of Columbus, New Mexico on March 9, 1916, resulting in the death of 16 Americans and much larger casualties for Villa's forces. Because of earlier, more minor raids, Wilson had already considered ordering an expedition across the border specifically to pursue Villa. Carranza regarded Wilson's actions as a violation of Mexican sovereignty and refused to aid the U.S. expedition. Although a majority of the Mexican citizens encountered by Pershing's forces wanted Villa captured as much as the Americans did, their hatred for the United States was even stronger. Many Mexicans gave false information to the Americans, and the peons were also notifying Villa of Pershing's location and direction of his travel. Tensions between the United States and Mexico grew as the search continued. Neither country was prepared, and neither wanted war. The punitive expedition is considered to be a failure since they never caught Villa. However, it could also be considered a success if the aim was to keep Villa away from the U.S. border and not allow him to invade America again. This had also been a good time and place to experiment with the new military weapons in preparation for the war in Europe against the Germans. This invasion also proved good training for military leaders, including George S. Patton, who would later lead U.S. troops to victory in Europe.